Hey there, everyone. Good to be back. How are we feeling? Huh? Feeling better than the pan and crop window, which is red for whatever reason. It's good to be back. Feeling even better today as well. Forgot to add the BGM to here. There we go. Much better. Okay, so today is going to be all about going behind the scenes. Today is going to be all about taking a look at my process as an editor. We're going to be looking at some behind the scenes goofs and bloopers because there's some funny stuff that some of the voice actors managed to cook up, which was a lot of fun. And also I'm just going to take a moment to illustrate to you how painful and agonizing this was for me. Also, got my green screen working. I ordered one on Amazon. I ordered a green screen on Amazon, and most of my time yesterday was spent snipping holes in it, and I managed to get my wings fed through it, which is why I started a little bit late. It was a little awkward, but I'm doing fine. So thankfully now I'm able to put myself in front of some footage, and we won't have these humongous wings taking up too much space, which is nice. So we've got that to be thankful for, and I guess that means that playing games for the rest of the week is also going to be a little bit easier. Thank you very much, Nezumi, for the Akasupa. That's so kind of you. Love you too, darling. Thank you. Okay, let's begin, shall we, by me showing you just how huge this project was, because I did not edit this in a very smart way. Like I have told you before, I am entirely self-taught as an editor. I've only ever followed YouTube tutorials, and I've only ever done basic research. Let me move this. Let me move chat over perfect behind me. There we go. Just a little bit at the top. There you are. So I've followed YouTube tutorials and I've learned that way. But what this has meant is there are a lot of efficient systems in editing, as in this software especially, that I never knew about until very recently. Vegas does not give you sequences. You can have nested timelines, but you can't have separate ones. And so this whole project, all of it, apart from one or two tiny parts, was all assembled on the exact same timeline. Want to know what is in the center of the frame at 3652? Good question. That would be a little bit before, because this edit doesn't include the prologue. Would that be this? Where is the center of the frame? That's a good question. I'm not sure. Love a professional this was a very unprofessional. This is just me following my own system. All right. What I'm gonna do is I am going to zoom out, and I'm going to show you what I had to deal with for this. Only a problem of my own making, but here we go, okay? And then I'm going to shift this up so you can see just how complicated this got after a while. So each one of those little blocks there is a artwork panel or a text bubble or an effect that has its own keyframes and effects applied, and and all of these are more keyframes applied to the different tracks. And in total there were 14 visual tracks and how many sound tracks? 16. 17, perhaps. No, 16. 17, yes, soundtracks. I can count. Yes, I'm a very good maths demon. That's what they used to call me. No, that's a lie. Thank you very much for the supers, everybody. So what I want to do is I want to take you through some of the ways that I would do this sort of stuff. So I've got for a while I didn't think I'd be able to show the pan, crop, or effects windows, but I got it working. I didn't realize you could dock it, and I've just been having it as a separate floating window this whole time. So let's take a look at a panel that has like a little bit more going for it that I can show. Oh no, you know what I'm going to show you? I'm going to show you, so this scene with the mother and the little monkey. This one, I was having a great time editing. It was very chill and relaxing. You see the preview over here. It was very chill and relaxing, and I was just sort of adding in little effects. So, for example, this me walking across the I guess, I don't know what you'd call that, like a front porch, patio. No, it's not a patio, it's a porch. Walking across that with these little footstep markers. So that would be this little transparent event here. And what I would do is have 3 keyframes. So fast in on the fade so that it sort of eases in. If you don't know what a keyframe is, it's essentially where you mark out a point on the timeline and then it will move in the most efficient way that it knows how from point A over to point B. And so with this one, with a fast fade, fast keyframe, it will move like most of the way and then it will slow down and gently arrive. So if something's coming into frame or fading in, fast is the best option. But if it's leaving, then slow is the best option because it very gradually eases out and then speeds off. So for this one, it would fade in like this. And if you look over here, you can see it would fade in and you see the little black line comes in and then it goes back down again nice and slowly as it fades out. And so you just copy and paste that a bunch of times and move them along so that they're in the same place as I am when I'm walking, and then you have this nice little effect like that. And so the rest of this was like, oh yeah, just sort of nice, calm, peaceful, relaxing scene. You've got you know, Trace's wonderful work with ambient sound. You've got Diego's soundtrack. Everything's lovely about this, and it's got this melancholy and everything. And I was really enjoying sort of a more patient tone with this scene. And I also really enjoyed sort of having, because most of the scenes in this film have plenty of music, which I think worked really well, because when you're working with individual still images, having more music there to sort of add a little bit more to focus on can be really, really good, because you can only move these panels around so much. If I chose to move them more than I did, it might become visually jarring and quite confusing. So simplicity works, but sometimes in an instance like this, you will have nothing happening for seconds at a time. And, you know, when you work in content creation, that can be quite scary. You know, you want people to be engaged. But in this scene, having no music, at least until the monkey shows up, I felt was a really nice choice. We've had lots of musically busy scenes for quite some time, up until this point when everything seems to quiet down a little bit, of course, before being interrupted by the chaos of the monkey. And this is why I chose not to have the bonus track version of Humanity, which you can listen to in the soundtrack, because I felt that it was a bit much for a scene that should be quite quiet, but it's still a beautiful piece. And I asked Diego to remove like the more active parts of the instrumental and keep the session violin for my outro music, because I thought it was just so pretty. So what we've got here is this scene, yeah, very quiet, lots of fun stuff going on. I'll show you how I edited speech bubbles while we're here. So most of the time with speech bubbles, that's an exception, I did it differently. Most of the time with speech bubbles, I would have them do a short little rise into their assigned position on the page. So what I would do is have the back of the page, which I had already beforehand. If you ever watched one of my work ASMR streams, this is what I was doing, is I was taking the A4 pages from the graphic novel and I was cropping them out, and I was like putting them into a format that would fit a landscape video. And in doing so, I was also separating this. Well, Milikas and Radio Star Maniac took over on the separating the speech bubbles from the page and filling in the backgrounds. And I was sort of like assigning them a number and printing them out as their own PNG. So what I would do is have a short fade with a fast keyframe of them slightly below where they should be, and then at the end of the fade, put them where they should be. So it results in this effect where you get a nice little like, boop, it just sort of rises into frame, and I think it's sort of, it gives it a little bit of motion, but it's very gentle, and that's something that I really enjoyed doing. So one of my favorite things about editing for this project was illustrating creative I would need to be sometimes, because Milikas did a wonderful job of illustrating something that makes perfect sense as a graphic novel. That's her area of expertise. But turning that into a video is something quite different. So this is how the page appeared in roughly like this. This is how the page appeared in the original comic. You have the three little lines, you've got gone, and you have the sort of the dotted line. And so I thought, okay, well, I can't just show that on screen. I need to do something else. So all of these images came separately as their own PNGs. So what I did was I thought, okay, well, let's indicate that something's missing by having like this indicates my realization. It's like, gone. And then, of course, instead of fading, just flashing on and off the little dotted line around it really sort of helps to give the page some more motion, even though what's going on is just me noticing the absence of something. And it's really interesting because this kind of thing is something you wouldn't really get in a film that was made in live action. So even though a project of this length was only really possible in this format, at least from what I'm familiar with, because of its relatively low cost, obviously, compared to full animation. But I feel as though it has a lot of really nice advantages of its own, and it's something that I was able to kind of get really creative with. So now up until the point that I was talking about before, so we have this lovely scene of, I like this part especially, of like the little lines supposed to indicate, even though the art is still, the little lines you see here, and I'll show you how I edited those as well. The little lines I would do with a mask with a little feather on it. So what I would have is over here, the mask begins, and this is the only point of that event that's visible. Over the course of this, the mask drags itself over the top of a little line so that it sort of appears in a little linear wipe, and that looks quite nice. I'm realizing this, I'm probably not explaining this very well, but what's interesting about this is the way that it's a way of showing that my head is looking up and down, looking for something, but with still artwork, there's no need for me to go in and pan and crop and what the fuck just happened? Huh? I think it saved. It saved somewhere else. I need to rearrange that. What the fuck just happened? See, this is very common for Vegas. You can tell that I'm getting into this perhaps a little too much. It didn't crash, don't worry. It's still booted up. But for whatever reason, okay, this is gonna be a problem. Give me one moment, everybody. I'm gonna try and fix this. What the hell? Maybe I have to restart the program. All right, everybody take 5. Everybody have a little siesta for a second. We're gonna take a minute. No, it will still work. It just does this kind of thing sometimes. All right, let me save and restart. It looked like it did a sort of auto-save, and the auto-save fucked with it in a way, which is odd, but okay. This is what I had to deal with. Not this specific issue, but things like this would happen all the time. It's really funny. Well, it's funny in hindsight, but at the time when I was editing this stuff, it was a fucking nightmare. But we live, we learn. You know, like Sonic. Didn't he live and learn? And you worked like this to make the entire movie. Yes, this was the process for everything except for the nightmare sequence, which was, thankfully for me, very easy because it was taken care of by NIJISANJI, who did a lot more animation than I am capable of doing myself, which was very kind of her. Oh, I think we've got it working again. Or maybe we don't. Oh my good gracious me. That's not that, is it? No, it's not. Hold on. I'm just checking something. I want to make sure it's not. Okay, that. Yeah, it seems fine. Yep, we got it. Okay. Back to the groove. Okay, what was I going to show you? So, now I've shown you how those little lines worked. What we've also got is Oh dear. Okay, let me show you this part, because this was the bane of my whole existence. The monkey throwing the rock. Oh my god. This was agony. So, like I was saying, I was very relaxed while I was editing this part, chatting with the mother, sort of having a very quiet, melancholy come down from sort of the emotional highs of the last parts of the film. But then, the monkey. Good lord, I don't know why I did this to myself. There's an old tweet of mine. Fuck me and my unnecessarily big ideas. Why do I do this to myself? And with this monkey, I really had to ask myself that, because it would have worked just fine to have the panel fly in with a sound like boom, like boom. It still kind of conveys what you need to know, but I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I animated the rock flying and bouncing off my head? So what I did was I first of all had, this is my way, period, of doing a fast entrance for a panel. So what I've got here is 3 keyframes. This is me off screen. So the screen is looking at this part and I'm off to the right hand side. I then count out exactly 4 keyframes. Exactly 4 frames. And remember that this project was made in 60 FPS. 1, 2, 3, 4. And at 4, I put it where it should be, but a little bit past. Just a little bit past where it should be. And then I count out 2 more frames, 1, 2, and then I put it where it needs to be. So what you've got is this cute little bounce back. You've got like a boop, 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 pshoo, and it kind of bounces into frame, and it's almost like it's flying so fast that it sort of needs to stop and correct itself. And it creates like a little bit of a more humorous effect. I experimented with doing different timings for this, but I think 4 and 2 is the right way for it. So that could have been all I had to do, but then I thought, no, I need to punish myself. So then we have the line. Which one is this? Which one is this? This is the impact. So the way this one worked was what did I do for this one? Maybe this. Okay, this one was a lot simpler. Oh, this one had effects. So what I did with this one was added a blur effect. And angled it so that it matched the angle of this little effect here. And it flew in like this, and so by the time it reaches my head, I animate the blur so that it decreases and turns off by the time it reaches here. And then I also had a linear wipe, so it comes in at this angle and sort of like translates in like this, so that you can see it kind of starts here, and then by the time it reaches me, this sort of blossoms out from my head. The thwap, very easy, same thing as this. The little 4 and 2 rule, don't know why I made these fast keyframes, but it must have worked. The little thwap, 4 and 2, and the same thing as the 4 and 2 on a blur, which is the same as this. So add a blur that mimics the 4 and 2 movement so that it doesn't look too, it looks a little too silly if you don't add the blur. It's very organic if you add the blur to that 4 and 2 come in like that. So all of this fairly simple, all of this fairly easy to pull off, but the part that really did turn me into dust was the little rock. Because what I did with the little rock was I was like, okay, it needs to fly in at the right time, and it needs to smack me in the head, and then it needs to bounce off and go out of frame. So what I've got for this one is I have 4 keyframes. First of all, it is over here. On the next keyframe, it flies a little further into frame, and then it kind of mimics the path of this. And so at this frame here, it has reached my head. And from there, what I needed to do was figure out, okay, how do I make it fly off at a reasonable angle? So change the center of rotation to sort of nearby at the arc that it would need to fly, and then rotate it around so it flies off, and then add in a little bit of blur as it flies downward out of frame. So you get an ooh, like that. And last of all, there is a little line that shows you the trajectory of the rock, which is sort of what told me how to add that effect. And I also needed to do, I think I did this one with a mask. Yeah, so you've got a little blur for this one. Or am I looking at the wrong thing? That's the, okay, that's the rock. This one is the rock. Yes, and this one is the line here. So what this does is that once it's flown in, you can see I've got keyframes for the mask here, so it starts slowly showing you more and more of the line. It starts off as being completely invisible, obscured by the other line down here, and then the mask travels along the line and then grows outward. So this part is already on screen, so you don't notice anything, but this part is not, and so it shows you more and more of this line at the same time that the rock flies. This took me maybe 2 hours to do, because there was so much troubleshooting and figuring out various different issues with the timing and trying to find a way of making it clear. So yeah, that took quite a while. I enjoyed it and I was proud of myself when I finished it, but like Jesus, it was a really difficult time, because remember, this program is quite laggy as well, and when I'm viewing it in draft auto, which is like a lower quality thing, so the program can process these visuals faster, you kind of can't tell what the final product is going to look like, so you need to turn it up into best or good. And I'm not going to do that right now, because I feel like if I do that while I'm streaming, it will crash, and I don't really want that to happen. Let me have a little sippy. Okay, what's next? So, the monkey, pretty cool. You guys know how I feel about monkey. He's like me, and he's a funny little guy. And what came next? So this part was fun. You got lots of little effects. You've got the little like pain line coming off my head, which I gave God bless. So glad that I decided to buy the Sapphire Effects plugin before I did this, because S-Shake is the best thing I've ever used. So this is an effect that automatically shakes this. So what I did was, for this part, I'll turn the preview up just a little bit so you can see that better. What I did was I added the shake effect to this as it appears. So like before, there is a mask that begins below this little wiggly line, and gradually over the course of the shot or the course of the event, it shows more and more of it. So that appears like that. See what I mean? And then what I managed to do was add this shake effect where I rapidly increased the amount that it shook at the beginning, as though it's like quite violent pain to begin with, and then I gradually eased off on the frequency so that it slowed down as the pain wore off. Remember how much thought is going into each one of these, and then let me zoom out and show you how many of these there are. If you ever wonder why I was gone from streaming for so long, it's just because I wanted to make sure this project was really good. And your response to it seems to make me feel that that's the case, so I'm very grateful for that. Now, there is a second shot where the monkey throws a rock, and I had to do even more for that one. So I'll tell you, the thing about the last monkey rock throw effect is, or plum, is that it kind of gave me a perfect idea of what it should look like. It hits my head and then loses speed as it bounces off. That's fine. Whereas this rock flies past my head, like this. Shoom, as it says there. Issue being, I wondered, okay, should I have it fly at a realistic speed, or should I make sure that people can see this is another rock or plum that's being thrown? So, in the end, what I decided to do was give it a pause in the middle. So you've got the speed lines around here, which I gave a little shake. Specifically, what I did was I added a high frequency, so it's fast, low amplitude so that it doesn't move too much, and a lot of tilt shake so that it moves sort of on a rotational axis. But that's not too important. What is important is, oh yes, I'm remembering now. Oh God, so this is a, normally the panel itself, so this is the artwork, right? That would appear on top of a solid white background, so that it fills the entire frame. If I remove this, it's just like, you know, it doesn't look great. But in this one, I wanted to have the rock flying from off screen, but without it appearing outside the panel. So I added the negative space with its own white background, but above, so there's a little hole through which we are seeing this. And that way, I can hide the rock underneath the top part of the screen and have it fly out from this side. And that way, it sort of appears more immersive, like it's all happening inside the panel. I know there is most likely a much more efficient way of doing this, but a lot of the time editing, especially a video like this, it's all about coming up with creative solutions to problems that you give yourself, because I didn't need to go this hard, but I just kind of decided to because I thought it would be nice. So originally the way this worked is, how does it look? I want to tell you, Amelie, you're incredible, you're amazing, and I'm so grateful to you for being in this project, but having to listen to maybe 100,000 times, well, I know I could have muted it, but I wanted to make sure I got the timing right, and so I listened to that little maybe 1,000 times, and it was a source of great pain to me. But originally what I had was this flying. Also, in this, this is not just the base artwork. Actually, the mother is on her own layer here so that the rock can pass behind her. So the art layer with the rest of the panel and with me is behind the rock, whereas I've cropped out the mother and she is above it, you know, further up on the timeline, so that she appears in front of the rock. So the rock, oh my, look at this shit. Look at the shit that oh my God, look at this shit. Okay, so remember what I told you about masks, right? And how it can reveal more and more of the screen, or more and more of the event. So it begins as just the rock. It begins as just the rock, and then as it flies, you've got, oh, don't do that. It begins as just the rock, and it flies like that. And so by the time the rock appears in frame, the mask has stretched all the way to show us the speed lines as well. Meanwhile, the positional keyframe has moved it like this so that it arrives in the middle of the frame at the same time, with an effect adding blur at the same time. So once that's done, what I decided to do in the end was to pause it in the middle. So I had it freeze for a second, even though that obviously is not how rocks work in real life. It sort of freezes in the middle to show you this is a rock that's flying, and then it speeds up and disappears. Originally, I didn't have this middle part, and it just phoom, and it looked very funny and satisfying, but I think also, considering how fast this scene moves, it might have been a bit visually confusing, and people might have wondered what happened there. So that's how that worked, and this scene took even longer because I was deliberating and trying to make up my mind over what I wanted to look like for so long, and the entire time I was listening to and so yeah, this I was very happy to be done with, and you best know that I made, as soon as I was done, I made like 2 backups just to make sure I would never have to do it again. And the rest of the scene is fairly self-explanatory. So, something else I will show you. Representative of my skin marking. Whenever the inner voice appears, there is a special sort of effect that the speech bubble uses to appear, and I originally was planning on having it appear just like any other because I wasn't really aware of this effect existing, but I was quite lucky because this is just a preset. It's called the nebulous preset under the gradient wipe, and you can change the effects and stuff, and you can change the keyframes and the way it works. So this really did come as a bit of a surprise to me, and you know, shout out to those preset effects, because this saved me a lot of time. I had wanted to add some kind of creepy effect to his speech bubbles, but it didn't really, you know, that would have taken me a lot of time to keyframe on my own. So really, really proud of how this works. Pog Nebulous. Oh, you know what else I'm going to show you? I'm going to show you how I did big shaky text effects, because those were moments where I chose to torture myself. It's not necessarily difficult, but it's very time consuming. So let me think. Where's a good example of this? Okay. Yes, we'll do this scene. Not that one. We'll do this one, yes. So, creak. Or the gurgle. Yes, perfect. Gurgle. So the way this worked was that this was its one file. The gurgle was its own file. All of the speech bubbles and effects were given to me on their own transparent layer, and I cropped this one out and saved it as it would be 26.png in my folder for, I believe, Act 3. And then what I would do is sometimes, like you can see with some other speech effects on this one, like whoo and whoosh, I would just sort of have them shake a little bit and then move through. But for some, it worked better to have it go letter by letter. And so what I would do is start masking out each letter and then putting a copy with the next letter on the line above, appearing slightly later. So I'd edit the first one all the way through. So I would add a shake effect where, just like before, I would have it at a very fast shake frequency and then keyframe it so it slows down with time. And then once that's done, copy paste and move it up to the next layer, make it a little shorter, appears slightly later, and also I would change the mask so that it is on the next letter and then on the next letter. So it goes like so, right? And so they all start their little shake slightly, very slightly later than the last one. And so what you get is this little effect where they all appear at once. But because they're not all shaking at the same time, it gives it quite a chaotic sort of, ooh, you know, kind of effect. Whereas if they all shake together, it kind of gives this vibe, like, you know, it felt like I would have been being lazy sometimes if I didn't do that and I just kind of slapped a shake effect on the whole piece of text and left it, you know. So painfully tedious. Oh yes, it was. But, and I'm sure there is some way of doing this properly that exists somewhere within the software. But if there is, I don't know what it is. I did this in the way that I personally know how to do it. Hiromi, thank you very much. Proud of you too. Thank you. Okay. So those were fun. Well, I say fun. That's the point where I would open a little bit of music and I would just sort of go to town on it for a little while. And also something interesting I should note is that some scenes had large chunks of dialogue changed or removed while I was editing. If something didn't quite fit, or if something felt a little too on the nose, or if it didn't fit with the music, I would just sort of take it out. And it's for that reason that you should probably consider getting the graphic novel when it comes out for pre-order, because you'll get to read a lot more of what didn't make it into the final film. What's Onigiri got to say? All hail hyperfocus. Shout out to 60 milligrams of Elvance, by the way. Holy shit, made this all so much easier. I've never been able to concentrate quite so well in my life. Do you know something? I remember, I think it was the day I edited this scene. Oh yeah, that's a little freeze frame that you might not have noticed. When it cuts to black, I added an effect. This is the kind of thing that some fan who's filtering through the film would find on their own, but no, it's just me showing you. I added an effect that highlights the red in the panel, and sort of, you know, I felt that it was a nice little way of looking a bit deeper at what's actually going on here, you know. Oh, you did notice that. Oh, well done. Well done. So I'll tell you more about this scene later, but yeah, this was an example of a time where, okay, so what I was saying was, on a day when I was able to concentrate, when I was editing this scene, I think I woke up and started editing at 10 a.m., and I genuinely think that I didn't stand up for about 12 hours, and I literally felt like I blinked and suddenly it was night. I know this is not good for me, but I was quite chuffed with myself because I'd made so much progress. So, you know, it is what it is. Sometimes you just kind of go through those sorts of times. I stood up to pee a couple of times, but you never know. Don't copy my work patterns. That's not good for you, okay? I was proud of myself for being able to concentrate for that long, but, you know, it was rough. Biggest challenge throughout editing this was resisting the temptation to just play World of Warcraft the entire time instead. But that would not have been very good. You have any unused pieces of backups? We can see some difference. Not really, no. The backups that I have, I actually never used. I saved backups in the instance that one of my edit files would become corrupted so that I could go back to something before. But my process as an editor, this film had no rough cut. There was no rough timing figured out beforehand. There was no effectsless version. There was no like go through and create a basic cut for, you know, for the purposes of scoring it or adding sound. Every scene was completely finished by the time I got to the end of it, because I felt more creatively sort of engaged, you know. I felt more sort of in tune with the project if I could like really go nuts and add effects or motion or cropping or whatever as it came up. I felt like I could time things better and I could make it fit better with the music that already existed if I just finished each scene completely one by one. And I had a lot more fun doing that. Do you want to know something? So members will already know this, and I'm okay to say this to the public now. This film was originally slated to release on October 14th, but I delayed it because I was going through some symptoms of stress, and I realized I was working on it a little too hard. When that was happening, and when that was still the release date, I was in Japan on official business, and while we were at the office doing work, I had my laptop with me and I was working on this at the same time, which I would definitely attribute to one of the reasons why I started to get too stressed to work, because while working on everything we were doing there, I was also focused on this. And one of the things that I wanted to do while there, and one of the things that I'm very grateful to Trace, the sound designer for this project, one of the things I'm very grateful to them for is for adapting to my process so well. So what they and I figured out originally was that I was just going to make a rough cut, send it to them, and they were going to just add sound design at a rate or, you know, and with effects they thought would work. But then I said, listen, while I was in Japan and I was making a rough cut and I was timing it to the music, I just kind of couldn't do it. I started with, because one scene that I had all of the voice lines for to begin with was the scene where the father and Jiro and I go fishing. I started editing that, but it just kind of didn't work. Like, I felt like I needed more to be able to accurately and confidently edit it. And so what I asked Trace was, I said, instead of just adding sounds to a rough cut and mixing it as you go, can you give me a folder of all the sound effects that you've made? Can you make the Foley and sound effects for this project? And can you then send those to me and I'll add them in on my end and I'll send these back to you after I'm done and then you can mix the project? And they went, yeah, that's fine. And this was a much better way of doing it for me, because even though it might not make much sense to finish the project before making any kind of rough cut, because with this many layers, it's very difficult to rearrange and adjust timing for things. I think I've got a pretty good knack for pacing inherently. People have told me this project feels very good to watch, which was a miracle to me. There were some parts where I really was worried that it moves too fast, but from what I've been told, people say that it like passes by quickly in a good way because they're invested, and I think that that's really nice. And that was my intention, you know. Even though we've got a lot of scenes which are just characters talking, I wanted it to move along quite quickly with little moments where we can catch our breath. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the pacing. That was the part I was worried about the most, because I was worried it was too fast. But you know, I remember once I watched the project back and I just felt like it moved too fast. But I'm glad that you guys didn't think so, because at this point there would have really been no real way that I could go back and adjust that. So that was good. And let me try and think about anything else that I can show you. Oh yeah, so with, I guess I'll move on to talk about sound a little bit. Look at, so one thing that I did, which Trace said was really, really helpful, Hex, seeing this timeline as someone who used to edit long-form videos, 10 to 50 minutes is unreal. The only issue with the movie was it was too short. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. He's so kind. Thank you, Hex. But yeah, like I've edited a bunch of videos before, and none of them have ever been this complicated. You can understand why it took me so long. I was making it through. On a good day, I would make it through 6 pages a day, and a page in the graphic novel is roughly like 3 shots. So it would roughly be like from, let's say, so this that's a page from here down to here. That would be 1, and then that's a page. This would be its own page as well. Then this one, and so on and so forth. I could get through about 6 of those on a really, really good day. But, you know, it took a long time. Panda Girl, thank you very much. Hyperfixation is so real. Yeah, it was. I mean, I know that I felt like a really strong moral conviction to finish this film and to make it good, because in a sense to me this is a way of preserving their memory, you know? And it felt exciting for me to sort of give back to their memory in a way, because apart from the graves, which are still there, that these people aren't exactly historically documented, or at least they haven't been until now. And so I wanted to make sure that their personalities were preserved and that people knew why I came to care for them so much. So let me take a look at another part of this. So, oh yes, what I was talking about with Trace was that what I did, because I had my own idea of what certain parts... Oh, okay, let me finish this thought, but I almost went on a side tangent. So, so what I would do is, as I was going through, because I wanted it to be watchable in the form that I was editing it in, I was mixing the audio a little bit myself. I didn't worry about stuff like reverb or panning it most of the time. I added a little bit of panning here or there, but most of the time I was adjusting volume to try and make sure that things sounded good. What I did in the end was I sent Trace 2 versions of every track. I would send them a track that was mixed a little bit by me, so I would call it partly mixed, and then which would include these envelopes, and so this little blue line controls the volume. So let's say if there was one part of my speech that was a little loud, I can add this little arc here that reduces the volume along this line and then restores it to what it was before. And then I would remove the envelope and then send Trace a version that hadn't been touched. It was just raw audio. And I basically said, listen, the partly mixed version, just use that as a bit of a guide so that you can understand like what I want for this piece of audio. And they were really, really good. And also were very complimentary and said that our sense of mixing is very much the same, which is nice. So they said it was a very easy job to just sort of refer to those and, you know, paint by numbers almost, up until some points like the food scene and the nightmare scene where a lot of audio is in play, and they really had to take over and do a lot more work, because my strategy for the nightmare scene was to crank every single volume envelope up to the top because I wanted it to be really loud, and obviously that just doesn't really fly in a professional environment. So I'm really glad that Trace did that. Yeah, literally everyone that I picked for this project was perfect for it. I feel so grateful that every music track and every piece of sound design, and also the personalities of everyone involved, gelled so well with mine. It felt amazing to have a really strong vision for this project and to have people respect that so much. I've been on projects before where it feels like, you know, when you're the director, you can absolutely listen to and take in the opinions of other people who are involved, but you do have the final say. You have to have the final say, and you need to know when to tell somebody no. And some projects I've been on have kind of suffered from a bit of a too many cooks situation, where you have one vision for the project and then someone else has a completely different idea, and they sort of come into the director's chair and try saying, okay, let's do this, let's do that. And you're like, hey buddy, what are you doing? This is not at all going to gel well with the rest of the thing, but they'll just get some idea in their head. No one on the Demon Hungers acted that way. Everybody was not only respectful of how this project needed to be, but also brought so many of their own ideas that fit. And it was amazing because they just... I'll pat myself on the back a bit and say that I did give them a lot of creative freedom, but not to the point where I would like just let them do whatever. Like with Diego, for example. Diego really did bring a lot of his own personality to the music, and in the earlier tracks I didn't have much feedback for him at all. They fit very well, but then some of the later tracks I was quite sort of like, okay, let's change this. So when I commissioned... okay, quickly going to cover up side tangent I was going to do earlier, and then we'll talk about the music. So what I'm going to do is show you some editing goofs. I'm going to show you some mistakes that you can actually, if you look, you can still see in the final project, because we were so down to the wire in the end and the edit took so long. I actually did not have enough time to watch it all the way through before I released it. If I had done so, because the film is in 4K, the preview doesn't run fast enough for me to see the project in any reasonable way without rendering it first. So I had seen each scene all the way through on its own, but I had not seen the entire film all the way through on its own, apart from a preview of the first 70 or so pages that I had sent to Trace for mixing. So while the whole thing turned out very well in the end, there are some goofs that you can pick up here or there. And when I was in VC with when the film was launching, I was so fucked up and freaked out because I was so worried there was going to be a gigantic editing mistake. Like a big one that happened during editing that I managed to fix was, what you can do is you can add motion to a whole track at once. So for example, what you would have is, let's say I wanted to move a track down with all the elements moving at the same time, like this one. So what we've got here is we've got this is a keyframe for the whole track. So if I moved this over here, this little thing would be moving on the same wavelength as this thing. What I would be so worried about is adding a keyframe way over here that says, okay, start something off at the top and then bring it down. But what I don't realize is I've not put anything over here to tell it not to do that to these too. So I was so worried that halfway through editing I was gonna, or once it was already released, I would be watching it come out live and watch one of these panels, like this one, just fly off in this direction. And I was so freaked out about having made some stupid goof like that. Thankfully nothing like that did happen, but there are a couple of things that I'll show you. Because I think it's funny to sort of look at these things. The funniest one of all, I think that the most hilarious shit that happened was the fact that some of the artwork in this film, I asked for Malikas to redo. She's done an amazing job at doing so much art. It was the thing that took the longest because she took her time to make it perfect, and I'm so glad that she did. But there were some places where some characters' faces, particularly my face, I basically told her, like, in some shots my face looks a bit long. And I was like, can you just sort of like touch up the facial structure, you know, kind of like take a look at the anatomy of it? And she was like, sure, absolutely, and got them all done very, very fast. What I did then was swap the new faces that she'd drawn into old pages, but I had forgotten to do it for all instances. So I added it to... So this is how my face appears in this scene. But what I didn't realize is that I mashed all of these layers. So you've got my red hair there, and you've got the different facial structure here. What I didn't remember is that when I edited this scene, I mashed all of these layers together to make a nice little linear wipe, but I did the linear wipe with the old file. So if you look closely, when it transitions, you can see you got red hair and chin. Bop. Long chin, no red in my hair. Bop. Bonk. Which is really annoying. Which is really annoying. I'm glad that the editing mistakes that happened are very small and very funny. It's nothing that ruins a serious emotional moment. Nothing that comes off as being a complete disaster. It's just funny little goofs that you can find. And when I was watching this film as it premiered, I was in VC with Hex, Shu, Claude, Scala, and I think somebody else, but oh, I'm so sorry to that person, but I can't remember. And whenever I saw one of these goofs, I was like, no, I was like, yeah, I was freaking out and I was screaming, and they were like, no, don't worry. And Hex said, don't worry, brother, it adds character to it. And I was like, you know what, that's true. That's true. This was an effort put together by a load of individuals and was organized by a man with ADHD. And so there are bound to be little problems here or there. And to be honest, I don't mind. I think it's really funny. You can also see, where's another one? At the point where I have my little memory of Tokugawa, the way that I edited this is that in the original graphic novel, Tokugawa's helmet, so that panel is down here, and Tokugawa's helmet overlays over this part. So the graphic novel you're going to enjoy reading because it's got a really nice level of depth to it. There are panels that overlap with other panels, but in the way that I translated it here, it would look a little odd if there was a little helmet sticking up here. So I went over and I sort of grabbed a halftone brush and Photoshop fill tools and kind of filled in this part of the panel, and then I just sort of got rid of that. And what I did was I added a little kind of like, I just sort of scrubbed over it, thinking they can't see what I'm scrubbing over, right? But what I didn't realize is that if you go down here, you can see the little blob that I drew to cover something up on the other one. I accidentally put this in that one, and when I copied this file over, because I had to change this face as well, I didn't realize that there was this little blob, and that's literally just me with the Photoshop paint tool, just scribbling over something to make sure that it doesn't show up. So if you look at that, you can see this accidental little blob there. I'm sorry if I'm ruining the movie for you now, but I think this kind of stuff is really funny. Okay, my throat's getting dry already. Okay. Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think if there's anything I'm glad about, it's that people seem to say that I have something of a of a clear vision, and that feels nice. Oh god, editing this took forever. Oh, the head shaking. Oh, the head shaking. Oh my goodness. So adding like these lines for their head shaking, like on an axis where they keep traveling down. So each one appears lower than the next. That follows as this comes into frame, because you see the head shaking and then I go and so I had to come it from the top down, because you see the head shaking and then I would go you know, kind of like awkwardly laugh, and so I needed for the shake effects to move with them, but also I wanted to show that they're shaking their heads, so this panel moves like da 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 da, like that. So you have these keyframes moving it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and then you have the keyframes in here moving it down, you know, moving it up. So you've got like starts here, moves into frame, and then travels upward like that. Yeah, and so there were just lots of little moments like that, that even though they're simple little scenes, took bloody forever, and it was puff. I like this one. I like doing this one. You know, maybe I should have separated those three puffs, those three little gusts of wind. Maybe I should have put them on their own angle, sent them at a bit of a rotational angle, but it's too late now. Movie's done. Okay, music. So let's talk about the music. Diego has actually done love animation goofs. Well, that's good news. That's good news. Diego has done his own stream where he's talked about his process doing the music for the stream, and highly recommend you go and watch it. It's on, I believe there's a VOD on his YouTube channel and his Twitch, so you can go and check that out. But from my perspective, I've said this before, but creatively, the way that my mind works is that I come up with scenes and scene structure based on music that I listen to. So you may, if you are perhaps a writer or an artist, you may make mood boards. A lot of people use Pinterest for this. A lot of people use Pinterest for this kind of thing. So, you know, you might make a mood board that gives you an idea of, oh, I want to do this. And it kind of helps you come up with new ideas for scenes, and it helps you come up with, okay, this line would work here, this would work there. For me, I've tried this many times, and mood boards with images just don't really help me at all. I've tried it. When I went to university, they gave me a load of assignments where they said, hey, make a mood board for this, and I was like, all right, and I would try it, and for me it just never really worked that way. So for me, my mood boards are playlists. I listen to music, and the music will, and a scene, some memory will be given new context and new life in my head just the instant I listen to a song. And so that's what I did for Diego. I made a playlist, and I said, this is what I want to inspire the creation of this film soundtrack. In some places, he would very faithfully recreate the vibe and tone of music I would send him. And then in some instances, he would go off the wall and make something entirely new. So I'll tell you some of the songs that I gave him to inspire him. So, first of all, let me try and find it. I haven't listened to this soundtrack for a while. So, okay, this ought to be fun. So I'll go through the different inspirations for these tracks. So for this one, Overture, or as it appears in the soundtrack, just The Demon Hungers. This track is a slow build that goes up to which is, as if you pay attention to it, is like my favorite editing trope ever. Is the slow audio build and then instant silence. I love it when films do that, and this film does that like a fucking 1,000 times. So this one is great because what you've got is it goes... The track that I gave him for this one was Above Earth, which is from the Gravity soundtrack. It's the first song that plays in that film. The way it works in Gravity is that it... In Gravity, the film opens with text that says, above Earth, there is no oxygen, kind of no one can hear you scream, and it has the more spacey technological elements that go, and then it cuts because, to illustrate, in space, sound does not travel. Now, there's nothing too poetic about that implementation here. I just think it delivers a really strong impact, and I really like that. So that's what I gave him for that. And then the vast majority of the tracks that I gave him for inspiration were from The Whale. The Whale soundtrack by Rob Simonson. So, hold on. I'm fine. So if you've listened to if you've listened to the Whale soundtrack, it's got a lot of tracks that are very dramatic and very sort of loud and extreme, but most of them are very quiet and subdued. And I really, really enjoyed that about that soundtrack. And I also felt inspired because The Whale is a self-contained story about a person with a unique affliction, who, as I was at the time, was on the way to the grave. And I was really inspired by that soundtrack. And so what I told him in particular, obviously I cannot play it for you right now because it is copyrighted. But if you would like to go and find this song on your own, perhaps on Spotify or on YouTube, or at least on the official YouTube upload, make sure you pay credit to the original owner of the music. The track Darting Distance was the main inspiration for my conversations with myself. And the way that I described this to Diego was that it sounds conversational. Darting Distance has a lovely sort of high-pitched violin, and it goes like, and then it descends into with this cello. And to me, I wanted a track like that because it would represent my conversations with myself, the inner voice speaking to me as that low, eerie cello, and then my own voice as more of a high-pitched violin. And Diego really kind of took this on board. And so this is what you hear with my musical motif being the cello and the voice in my head being represented by those dark, deeper, double bass, distorted strings. Really a nice way of implying musically that that is me. It's a part of myself, and it's just, it's my own voice spoken through, a different perspective. Also, how would you like to hear some roars of the inner voice before an effect was added? Because I have, so there's, I'll show you another kind of minor goof, but this goof was intentional. So in the original film, where is it? At the moment when Jiro first pipes up and I call to him and the wolves tell me to fuck off, there is this moment where my face rises into frame. And you may notice there's a little white blob over here. There was supposed to be a line. There you go. See, final pickups. I did it very late. There was supposed to be a line where the inner voice goes, perfect, like that. Unfortunately, I couldn't really get the cadence right for it at that time. And then there's another moment where I go, shut up. I go, shut up, like that. But you may notice that text is gone, and it's because whenever I would record, first of all, I didn't have enough time to send this to Trace to have them add the effect, so it would sound kind of weird and out of place. But all of the audio that I recorded for this voice was done on a night when I had been doing some singing practice, and I had wiped the fuck out of my throat. I had been singing so hard. I've been trying to learn unsuccessfully how to do a death metal scream, and I had hurt my throat quite badly. But then when I spoke, I realized that my voice was so gravelly, I thought, now's the time. And so I recorded all of my dialogue for this voice at once. So here is some... It's a little bit high-pitched because Trace pitched it down a little, but this is what it sounded like. So this is all raw audio, unedited.
Get up.
Which one? This I like.
How many times must I say it? Get up. Clan may be dead, but you are not.
You can hear so many mouth noises in this. It's because I'm dehydrated.
Do you intend to honor their sacrifice by starving? in the dirt. Get up.
I kind of leaned into it a lot harder on that one. I like the delivery of this line too.
Good. Now, food.
See, I can't normally sound like that. It was quite a nice little miracle.
No good. The nearest humans are.
And I think that Trace added a really, really nice effect to that, but it's also fun. Oh, this is great. It's the Emperor Palpatine.
Do it.
I think, I wonder, when I recorded this originally.
Do it.
When I recorded this originally, did I go?
Do it.
I must have done.
Do it.
Where is it? I must have done. I know myself too well.
Do it.
I knew it. I knew I would have done that.
Do it.
That's me from like 4 or 5 months ago. Oh, I was so young, so innocent. Exactly, Onigiri. I can't picture myself not doing that to myself. All right, let's undo that a few times. Make sure we get back the original take in case I need to re-render this for anything. Maybe for the Billy release. Oh, that's so funny.
Do it.
There you go. Oh god, this is so fun. Okay, so once that's done, so that was the one. We were talking about the music before, weren't we? Oh my goodness. Oh. Okay. So next up, Fangs, the track that played for the scene with the wolves. This one was great because I referenced not The Whale, but for this one I referenced a track from The Revenant. No, actually this one was The Whale as well. It was called Midnight Storm, and this one plays at a point in The Whale when things appear to be going quite badly, and it's sort of got some dark, intense violin, cello, double bass, that kind of stuff. So it worked very well for this scene. Really just because I wanted to imply a little bit of tension. You know, it's a standoff between me and these pretty dangerous creatures, but of course they know that I'm a much more dangerous creature. We have another example here of the really annoying shake effect that I did, the here. Oh gosh, excuse me. Is all sort of done, you know, one letter at a time. Not much to really talk about with that one. But apart from it being a fantastic track, this one, originally, you're also seeing the original track names which Diego gave them during production. So some of them kept their original name, Fangs Awakening, but this one used to just be called Them, which is a nice name. But I think the name Second Son alludes to Jiro's name and how tragic it was. And sort of helps people who may not understand the language too well kind of catch on to that. So this one was good because this was where I asked Diego to introduce this little melody, which come on Vegas, don't crash on me now. Okay, to introduce this little melody, which we called from the beginning. I said this is Jiro's theme. That's the first moment where that plays, and I told him from the beginning, I said Jiro is the emotional core of this film. As far as I'm concerned, he's the main character, and he needs to be really the film. This is the film's main motif. It's the main theme, and I wanted to call it Jiro's theme because to me, this film is in honor of him. And what's interesting is that originally I wanted to play it when Jiro first appears. Originally, you may notice that this scene feels like it's got a bit of a gap in it. There's a long pause in the music and in the voice while Jiro appears. And that's because this moment originally appeared as he did. In the end, I found that it didn't really work all too well, because you still have moments like still enough time to leave the child and his family in peace, and then, well, which I felt like with nice sort of calming music wouldn't really work. There's still some tension because you're not sure what my intentions are. There's been so much conversation with myself about finding humans and needing to eat something, so I don't think that relative comfort is implied until the father arrives. And that's why I chose to move it on a little bit. It's also because it fit better with the flow of the rest of the scene, and we could have this little flourish as he shows me towards the house. It's little musical moments like that that make me really glad that I asked Diego to make the music before I edited the film. Because I'm so kind of in tune creatively with music that I like, it's so that I can very closely time beats in the story with beats in the music. So, like with that, I asked Diego to just put something together based on the artwork for this film, and from that gave me an idea of how to pace the scene. And it made the whole thing so much easier for me to figure out what needed to happen and when. There were some instances where it didn't work quite so well, so what you will now get to hear is the fact that in the film there is a different version of track 4, Second Son, than you can hear on the soundtrack. There is a part where it ends off at this point. So in the soundtrack that you can listen to on YouTube, this part feeds straight into this, but in the film, it tunes out on its own. Which I really appreciate, because getting to hear just these instruments on their own is really nice, I think, especially in a scene with so little other sound, and you get to hear the music sort of take center stage for a little bit. Minute. It's funny. At some point during production, Radio Star Maniac sent Malikas and I a meme, and it was the fish from SpongeBob. It was what's his name? I can't remember his name, but he's the sort of the greenish fish who has like the brown pants on, and he walks and he says, "Rev up those fryers, because I am sure hungry for one. Help, help!" And he sent a meme that was, "Rev up those millets," because this family they make a lot of millet, you know. So moving on from that, then the next section sort of comes in on its own as well. A really, really nice little motif that plays when I sort of evoke some memory of my status as a lord, and also, you know, regrettably using that voice power effortlessly lie to this family about my origins. They're not going to know that I'm a demon, nor are they going to know anything about what happened. Lie to them just like I lied to you. But this kind of gives a little bit of oomph to that power and what I'm doing with it. So something else that's interesting is that I asked Diego as well to come up with a motif for Tokugawa as well, and you can hear it now. You're gonna love this. So I basically just said Tokugawa should have his own theme. Tokugawa needs to be called by a specific motif. So at the moment when the father says said the shogun had just died, and I leap into frame, he's dead. Tokugawa's theme is this. And then, if you go all the way to the end, during the battle, hope this is not going to be too loud, as Tokugawa makes his entrance, you can hear which to me, I know some people were a little because the first sort of time that I told you about my story was so long ago, some people forgot specifically about Tokugawa. Some people, but I think that just saying the Shogun, and also having that little prologue that was added quite late into production, having that at the front mentioning Tokugawa by name, I think this motif really helps to kind of bring your mind back to when it was mentioned. Oh, I need revenge on the Shogun. If you don't know, well, watching me get defeated and hearing that song come back. Now, listen, some people saying it was Uesugi Kenshin does make me laugh a little bit, because it is mentioned very explicitly in the film itself that he died nearly 40 years ago. And earlier in the film, I ask, how long has it been since the castle was burned? And the wolves say 3 winters. I don't think that the math is mathing, girly. You may need to check yourself on that one. But, you know, in the moment, I can forgive people for being a little confused. Okay, and then this is a nice one to take a look at. So after that one was done, section 2, sort of after this is over, have a little fade out, and then move in with the next section, which Diego also kindly separated for me. So I did a lot of work. It's a long scene for a song that was already long and then became longer as the scene grew. I mean, look at that. But this is, again, another really good example of that conversational music that I was talking about, of the call and response. What am I doing? And then I'm a really big fan of myself, of how I edited this part of as the speech bubble appears. And again, this is one of the reasons why I'm really glad that this was a graphic novel or a manga edited in this way, because that is, I don't know, it's a little creative way of mimicking a filmmaking technique that might be used in a different way in a traditionally made film, but that we can use in our own way in something like this. So maybe this musical cue in an actual film, or like sort of a live action film, would appear with a camera panning and seeing some creature sat in the corner. For us, it's the acknowledgement that this speech bubble only ever appears when that voice is talking to me. And that kind of musical instrument, especially this one, only ever appears when that voice is talking to me. It's never something I would have asked for, but I like a lot how Diego chose to use the distortion effects. It almost reminds me of the soundtrack to a game like Omori. You know, you've got, which again is a game all about, you know, looking to one's own inner demons. Really helps to add like a lot of mystique and chaos to any scene where this voice kind of takes center stage. Let me go for some rolls on this one because it sounded good too.
Is that a trick question? You are here to eat.
You can really tell that I fucked up my voice in order to be able to do those lines. Jade, it's not boy math, it's kindred math. All right, whatever you say. So that was interesting. There's a lot more. Okay, so this is great because this song is probably one of my favorites. This. This one is probably one of my favorites, and I think this was the first time. I've been very impressed with all of the music so far, but you have to remember that a lot of what I was hearing was an original only digital draft that Diego has sent me, and so I was feeling good about it, but I was aware, okay, it will sound different when it's done. This one, however, came to me practically fully formed, minus the clarinet, and this is the first time I was like, whoa, this is really good. Like, damn, this is like so much better than anything I thought I could have commissioned on my own. You know, I was really impressed. And now what's interesting is that when I asked him, like, okay, for the scene where we go fishing, what I'm going to need is something that sounds quite jovial and happy and nice. And so what I gave to Diego was some music from Lord of the Rings. I gave him Farewell, Dear Bilbo, and Very Old Friends, which is music that plays in the Shire. And needless to say, this doesn't really sound like that. He got the tone, but to me, this takes more pages out of the book of Fantastic Mr. Fox. This sounds more like Alexander Desplat than it does like Howard Shore. But to be honest, I think it works incredibly well. I'm glad that he chose to kind of take a bit of a swing out of left field for this one, because it works incredibly well. And you can hear a session clarinet as well. Where is that? Da-da. Now, something interesting as well is that this is not where the song ends organically. The song normally keeps going. I could have asked Diego to end it here, but I thought, okay, no, I can do this myself. What I have is a layer entirely for reverb and nothing else. This layer has an effect, a cathedral level reverb added right on the end of it. So what will happen is, if I play a little sound, it will make a lot more noise and it will have reverb that doesn't end with the event. It will keep going. So any time I would want to end something off with like a nice little sound, I'd quickly cut off the end of it. So you can see this is the same song sort of cut off at the end, and I dragged it down into the reverb layer. So if you play it without the reverb, it just stops. And it sounds a bit like, huh? Right? But if you add the reverb layer, this is the final note, and it goes simple. And that's like my little way of kind of doing a little bit of music, which normally I don't know how to do. And then later on, it gives me the chance to we have a little bit of a more serious scene. Wolves show up. Me and the father have kind of a serious chat about something, and then wild boars come through. Which what I like about the way that this is structured in the graphic novel is that this is implied to continue the serious tone, but then it sort of pivots into the fun conversation about the mountain whales, and that's when I had the opportunity to bring this music back. And that's something that I found really fun. So if this song more than anything reminds me of Christopherson's theme from Fantastic Mr. Fox. So if you want to listen to something that sounds similar to this, find Christopherson's theme on Spotify or whatever your streaming service is. Yeah, we've got some stuff going on here. Now, originally, if you listen to the soundtrack, there is a song at the very end called Lament. And this was the first version of the track The Demon Devours 1 and 2 that Diego had come up with. And I told him, like, it's going in the right direction, but to me, this is doing too much. That scene needs to be very quiet and subdued, because what my worry is that it would be a little too, I guess, manipulative to have too much music happening in a scene that is so sad. So I told him, like, let's take a step back and try and make it a lot more stripped down, just one or two instruments at a time, if possible. But in this scene, the father appears to be making some kind of reference to losing something. And later on, and interestingly enough, this scene originally had a little inner monologue from me where I think Jiro means second son, but he's clearly their only remaining child. Now, for me, I took this out because I like leaving that as a bit of trivia. I don't enjoy sort of lecturing the audience at all. I like it when that's something that people can find out for themselves, especially if you are Japanese or understand Japanese, and that's something that would occur organically to you. And also, as is implied by the mother saying, keep having children, and when we lose them, we just go looking for more, while she's blessing those graves with water. I felt that there were enough clues for people to put together rather than having something stated, outright. But originally I had that lament bonus track here because, being on the theme of losing a child, I felt that it would be sort of an interesting sort of call forward or foreshadowing. But in the end, I felt like it was a little too on the nose, and because there is so much music in this project, I think that for this scene, a moment of quiet was the right call. And I really like just sort of having the ambience in this scene. Let me get rid of that. You can just listen to. Just having that ambience, I think, kind of works a lot better for the tone.
To lose the place you belong and the people you knew.
Mm-hmm. So, otherwise, there was one other. There was one other really interesting little thing. So, Jonah is very funny, and he and there were a couple times when he and I did our session, I sort of we missed a couple lines, and so later on, closer to the release day, I asked, can you, we don't need to do a session or anything, don't need to call, but can you just kind of fill in like one or two of these lines that we missed? And he was like really great about it, just sort of got him right off the bat. And I want to show you one that's really, really funny. So, for this, I had, when I start joking about the mountain whales, and he says,
if my lord says there are whales here, then...
And then I interrupt by laughing. I ask, I had a marker here that said, "Dad jump scare noise?" ? Because I thought, look at that face. He looks like, And so Jonah did a load of different noises for this. He did a load of them that sounded, in my mind, a little too serious. A little too serious, a little too goofy. And then he lands on this absolutely perfect read of the line that actually made me cackle.
And
it's so perfect. Like, he's kind of really wasn't expecting me to laugh like that. Like, he's sort of confused, we're out fishing and there's all of that. And then just, he sounds like uncomfortable and also quite surprised that I've done this loud, obnoxious laugh. And what's even better is that after this read of the line, Jonah has a little ad lib for me of him just saying, listen to this.
that one was pretty funny, Vox. You should probably use that one. Looking at the panel here.
He's great. He was so much fun to work with, and I won't play it because I imagine that was just meant for me. But at the end of that file, you've got like a really nice little. He like left me a message saying like, "You got this, Vox. Go kick this thing's ass." And I was like, "Uh-huh." That felt really good. So that was a really nice little side tangent there. Memories of Winter, I remember this one went through quite a few changes, but I can't really remember how much it changed. I think I remember the early versions of this just kind of being, again, a little too much. I thought there was like quite a lot going on musically, and I said, let's just bring it down. I think most of the advice that I gave to Diego during the production of the music, as I said, we need to just bring it down. Let's cut out a few of those instruments. Let's make them a little simpler. Let's, there's a lot going on here. Let's take that out. Let's take that out. Let's take that out. So that we just have a very, very simple, quiet, relaxing listen in some places. Because to me, my worst fear is manipulating a person with music. Your emotions when you watch a film should be your own. And so music can be there and it can really help. But I think that it's one of the reasons why at some more emotional scenes near the end, I chose to go without music, because especially after I wake up from my nightmare, the silence, I think, is a really effective way of coming down from the loud chaos of that scene. And then this one as well, just sort of came very easily. Was this based on anything in this? Not particularly. Like, a lot more of it was just sort of inspiration taken from The Whale, but I know that Diego has his own inspirations from other projects that he enjoys. So obviously, if you want more details about the inspiration he took from music, then you should definitely just go and listen to his VOD, because he has like a lot of really interesting things to say. Tritsi, I've been wanting to get into editing, but this seems pretty intimidating. Do you have any tips on where and how to start? YouTube tutorials, and don't try and do something like this to start with, because this was insane. What I would recommend is to just start with something you want to do. Like, I can imagine maybe if you're in this community, you might be interested in clipping. What I would say is to just self-teach, develop an organic interest in editing, boot up a program, because there are lots of programs you can get for free. Vegas, this is a very simple program. It has a lot of tutorials out there. Vegas has a long history. It was kind of the editing program of choice for early YouTube, like sort of 2007, 2008 YouTube. Vegas was there, and it was, the pro option of choice before something like Premiere came around. Or at least, I don't know, I think Premiere was always the option for professionals, but when it came to intense editing, Vegas at the time always felt like the best choice. And it's just sort of what I wound up spending most time doing. The thing you've got to remember is that I have been, I've been editing like this for more than a decade. So I have a lot of experience, but, it's never too late to learn. If I was to give you some advice, maybe learn Premiere or DaVinci Resolve instead of Vegas, because this software is actually really fucking poorly optimized and was a nightmare to work with at times. Maybe Premiere is bad too, but every time I've used Premiere instead of Vegas, it runs like butter. And so there's a lot more tools in Premiere and in DaVinci Resolve and After Effects that you can use compared to Vegas. I edited in this because this is what I'm used to. So editing is tough, but the best thing to do is to understand the theory around editing and sort of what makes things click and what you can use in order to convey a scene properly. Effects, cropping, panning, blurring, doesn't matter. That's not what editing is about. Editing is about pacing, and it's about showing the audience what they need to see in order to understand the story. I would really recommend, what's her name? The woman who edits for Martin Scorsese on a lot of his films. Thelma Schoonmaker. I would very much recommend looking up some of her work and some interviews with her, because what she talks about is the way in which editing can save a doomed film. Some films have footage that is borderline unusable, and so it's an editor's job to look through that footage and think, what can I salvage from this? What footage does actually work? It's like in a certain scene where someone's facial acting is messing up. Like maybe someone breaks character in the face during a conversation scene. What's your job as the editor to cut away from their face when they do that so that the audience's immersion isn't broken. And it's about making things flow. It's about making sure you don't break the line of action, 180-degree rule, but that's more of a cinematographer's job, blah, 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 blah. So don't get distracted with the complexities of editing. Just make sure that you understand the basics and that you can edit a scene that feels good. And then once that's done, add complexity, learn new things, and you'll be rolling in no time. So not much. Enjoy the quiet in this scene, and then you've got the monkey. Do-do-do. Ba-do-do. Do-do-do. 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 Dum 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 do-do-do. Dum ba-do-do. Bum ba-dum. Do-do. What I love most of all about this track is just how much it manages to blend sincerity with humor. Because this scene was very serious and somber and quiet up until, and then when the monkey appears, it's like starts with something very humorous, but you have these little moments that appear with lines that are more serious. Good intentions are not wasteful or a disgrace. You have, I think that it just finds such a great way of portraying what is a very meaningful and impactful conversation with a happenstance and circumstances that are very, very funny. If the music was purely serious, then the monkey would be quite strange. And if it was purely humorous, then I don't think these lines would impact in the same way that they do. And Diego just, like normal, knocked it out of the park. So this scene originally had a song that was quite a lot more intense and sort of horror feeling, which I didn't think was the right call. This was my deathbed, to my understanding. This was where I was comfortable to let to leave this planet and go somewhere else, see if a demon has a chance of making it into the afterlife. I was just ready for it, and I wanted it to convey that. I wanted those funeral bells, and that's sort of what you hear with. And in a sense, I think that what this portrays is the way in which I'm choosing to let myself die. And what's also interesting is the "this is ludicrous" line originally appears somewhere else. "This is ludicrous" originally appears over this panel. As I'm talking to Jiro and I nod, I would say to myself,
"This is ludicrous."
But that's not where it appears originally. It would appear here. There is another line that would appear over this image of me with the tinnitus and the thumping heartbeat, which is a pretty chilling line, but I felt like it did a little bit too much. So the line is, I think it's here.
"Ludicrous. Eat it already."
Oof. Definitely a pretty spooky line, but I felt that it illustrated what was going on a little too clearly. Why are you doing that? It's disgusting. My sort of understanding was that I wanted the moment where that voice says "food" to be the real, final, definitive nail in the coffin of that's what's going on. Now that line does appear in the graphic novel, but not here. For this film, the clues are all there, and they're pretty clear. They're pretty clear on what's going on, but not definitively to the point where you can say exactly what's about to happen. That realization is made with the line "food," which is the name of this track. It was originally called "Break," but I named it "Food" because, I mean, there's an enormous, almost chapter title that says "food" at the start of this. So then it's going to be difficult for me to talk about this kind of stuff because it's difficult, but you know, if this film is about preserving their memory, then it should be about preserving all of it. So this scene took the longest to edit out of any of it. All of the previous scenes with the effects that I was talking about, with the lines and the masking and the blurs and the effects and the panning and the cropping, all of that pales in comparison to how much I had to do for this. So when Trace was doing their sound design, I was very busy, and I essentially said, go through and do what you need to do, but just ask me if you have any questions. And in this scene, Trace did a very simple sort of like shing noise, and to me, I was like, okay, I think I would need something else, but I can do this myself. So a lot of the sound design in this scene came from me. It was stuff that I bought online, licensed sound effects and stuff like that. And so how did I do this? Oh, Jesus. So I would have each section of the little lightning bolt be its own image, and then I would crop it out in Photoshop, and I would mask it into existence one after the other in line with the lightning sounds, zip, 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 like that, in line with the sound effects. And then what I would do is I would have some keyframes so that it would move from, this is the screen, from down here to up here, but I stacked them all on top of each other and made sure they all had the exact same keyframes that move at the exact same speed so that they, you know, wind up in the right place at the right time. And then once that's over, linear wipe as my face appears, and the little sort of shock like that appears. This cut alone probably took about an hour to do, and even longer at the next part when you have all of the chaos start to happen. So you have two effects here. You have the little cough, which not only has movement and cropping, but it has a shake effect as well, which takes ages to render. And then what you've got is the scene moving around. And instead of using the little 4 and 2 bounce effect, I gave it just a straight 6 fast keyframe, just darting from one place to the other. So with this one, like that, it just moved like that. And this was a fun little edit to do. Difficult to talk about this scene in any context, but I do want to show you some of the stuff that I did. So where is this part? I actually enjoyed quite a bit. So the eye moving is interesting because the way that I did this was I masked around the inside of the eye, then masked around the eye itself. So the layer on the bottom is the white layer on the eye. Then you've got the golden eye, sort of iris, retina, all of that. And then the outer panel is above that. So when it shakes around, it's always underneath this and in the right place, but it's always above a little bit of white. And so figuring that out, this was an edit that I thought was going to be very complicated, but it came surprisingly naturally to me, which was nice. Really enjoy using, so lucky to come across this effect that, really does sort of, I feel like, represent that inner voice so well. And then obviously we have all of this stuff go on. Now this raw is interesting because I want to promise you it sounds like this because I was trying to learn, on the day that I recorded this, I was trying to learn how to do a death metal scream, but I didn't manage it. This is not a real death metal scream. This is just me yelling and ripping up my throat pretty badly. It helped me with the voice, but definitely was not the wisest idea.
Food!
Oof. Definitely fun to do, and there are way, way, way more takes of that. Way, way more takes of that. It took me a long time to get that right. I like especially how the end of it sort of gets cut off by the music too. The music really sort of helps, I think jamming the music in there really helps to sell the sense of chaos. Like you're still grappling with how traumatizing of a scene this is, and then the music carries you off somewhere else really fast. And it's, it's not nice, but it is clever, in my opinion. A few of the effects on, I don't want to watch that scene. We'll look at this one. So this one was where I discovered some new, okay. I'll show you one thing I did with this one. So this obviously very complex to edit. A lot of those individual shake effects, like with the lettering on the cough, they all have their own shake. I've shown you that kind of thing before. But the food, sort of the way that it moved around the screen was quite fun. So what you may not have noticed because you were focusing on other parts of the screen is that it starts at the bottom of the screen. So it appears like that, darts to the bottom of the screen, and in the graphic novel, you'll be able to see how these panels are above the word food, where it is there. And then what I did is I started introducing a slow shake effect, like it's sort of building in energy, like it's a creature that's ready to pounce. And then so ordinarily, think of this as an A4 page, and this is the top of the page. It's cut in half by the word food. Then underneath you have the art you see for the rest of it. So instead of where ordinarily a page structured like that, what I might have had is like sort of, it just gradually pans down. In this one, I thought, okay, this is the middle point, so I can have that move on its own. So it, like some kind of praying mantis, it kind of shakes from side to side, getting ready to pounce, and then boom, like that. And I think the effect with this is like that. Well, you can't really see it because it needs to render itself. Come on, you can do it. and it's quite a spooky effect. And I liked the way I laid this page out because it felt like kind of an eerie perversion of, I don't want to look at that, an eerie perversion of the way that these pages have been edited throughout the way that these pages have been edited throughout. So it's a more chaotic and more destructive way of editing a page that is structurally quite similar to other pages that have appeared in this project. Okay. And then I'll show you some effects from this one. So this was where I was lucky enough to discover the dissolve shake effect. So with this one, what you've got is, so what I did for these little kind of cut-ins that would represent, what I'm looking at. So I see my hand with the blood on it. And then what I would have is the base layer with some film grain over it, which would be this layer. A little bit of film grain kind of makes it appear as though I'm, if you ever had it where you stand up too fast, your head doesn't really have enough blood. It can kind of look like that, sort of represent a bit of distortion, a bit of chaos, panic, that kind of stuff. And then further instilling the idea that I was freaking out, I had another lower opacity track over the top, or lower opacity event with a little bit of a shake on it. And this shake kind of doubles up over top of it, and it makes it look like my vision's distorting, I'm losing focus, not sure what to look at. And I've done that for the whole of this, but with a much more subtle expression. Like there is a very shaky cut of me here with the shake effect on it, but it's a much lower opacity to make sure that you're always looking at the right place. And then of course you have some cutaways like this, which I'm not sure what this effect is called, but blur chroma, where I told it to focus only on the reds in this image, and it created this really disgusting but quite fitting portrayal of me there. This is an example of a nested timeline. So with Scramble, I did the exact same thing I showed you earlier, where I would have one letter appearing at a time, SCRAMBLE, sort of appearing all at once, all with their own shake, but there were too many of them for the amount of layers I had left, because we already have, how many layers were actively moving and animating here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 different, 9. So 9 different visual effects were moving, shaking, animating all on their own. And then I needed to add Scramble on top of it. So what you can do is say, create nested timeline. And what the nested timeline will do is it opens up technically a new project that you can then do, then edit with, and it will do its own thing. Now what you may notice, which is another editing goof, is that if you watch the film, this looks a little choppy when you look at it. And I didn't notice this when I was editing, and it's because when I created the nested timeline, for whatever fucking reason, the nested timeline doesn't copy the same properties of the mother timeline. So this one appears in 30 FPS, whereas the rest of the project is in 60. And it's really distracting, and I wish I'd noticed that, but I didn't. I enjoyed in this scene using, for the rest of the project, what I enjoyed doing was using fades to transport, but to transition between scenes or cuts. But for this one, a straight harsh cut worked very well, especially with the music. Oh, I should go back to talking about the music as well, shouldn't I? So you got that little kind of harsh hit there that goes very well with the cut. So this song actually, what this gave way to, Mars, thank you very much. Did you brief the rest of the team with a storyboard or a treatment? Kind of. The art was, so for the art, I gave Onigiri's script with a description of what this was for and what I wanted for it to Malikas, and I just said, go nuts. When I commissioned that artwork, it was very early in my time at NIJISANJI, and at that time, you may know that I was streaming multiple times a day, every day, and I didn't have time to make a detailed treatment or a detailed sort of description for what I wanted for each page. So I just said, listen, here's the script. I'm basically just gonna, try and sort of match whatever you think this is worth. Go for it. Be creative, because you know more about this than I do. And I mean, she did. She went absolutely nuts, especially with pages like this, conveying that sense of chaos and kind of creatively laying out these pages is something that she has an immense talent for. And so I didn't really have much of a hand, really, and I can't take credit for the way that the project looks. That's all her. I gave her some ideas for colors, and I said, let's focus on having black and white, but with red where it needs to be there, and she did a great job with that. But then when it came to the rest of it, once the artwork was done, that is what I gave people. Diego, I just showed him the artwork. I showed him the playlist for inspiration, and then I said, go nuts. Just give me updates when you've got it, and I'll give you feedback, and we'll take it from there. So yeah, really very much like I'm lucky that these people understood me so well, because there's a bit of, revealing this much about myself to people and then asking them to, follow my instructions. It was always a little kind of strange to me, and I felt a little sort of worried about being too much of a tyrannical director. And so I gave everybody like a lot of creative freedom. And I'm glad I did, because they really executed what I was looking for with flying colors, I'll talk more about that later on. Perfect balance, exactly. I think what a lot of people have said is that I had a very clear vision, which is a really wonderful compliment to receive as someone who's wanted to make a film like this for so many years. And I think it's like my vision is clear to me, but I'm just glad that it translated well, and I'm glad that people saw what I was going for and they were able to understand it so well. I think to me it falls down to my process of coming up with ideas, and like I mentioned with music, a lot of the scenes from this film were born from music that I found that represented it. Most of the scenes in this were stories that I told Onigiri, truthfully, friend to friend, and that Onigiri would then adapt into script form. And he knew about all of this from the beginning, obviously, but there were details and anecdotes and stuff that I told him that he then sort of took charge on and added to the script. But there were a couple of scenes that were made by me, and those scenes were all based on music. And I'll show you all about that in this next one for the nightmare. So this scene, what incredible work from NIJISANJI on this motion animation, taking existing artwork that had already been done and cropping it, cutting it, layering it, and adding effects and animation. Just beautiful work. And I love how seriously this was taken and how much of an impact it added to the scene to have artwork that is all still for the past 30 minutes and then suddenly adding animation to a scene where it's needed. I really enjoy the impact of this eye appearing. And you may not have noticed, but this cut has the red effects at the top and bottom. And it's kind of a subtle little detail, but if you pay attention to the top and bottom, you can see the black cinematic bars crop in to kind of give a very small piece of foreshadowing that we're about to enter a more traditional film-like experience, which is something that I really wanted to do. I'm glad people noticed those. I was worried the scene was too dark for people to see, but I didn't exactly want to like invert or make these white bars that turn black or anything like that. So that's good. This is incredible. And this scene, actually, before it was animated, before the music was done, before anything, this was the first scene that I edited. Because in my mind, if anything about this film was going to work and work incredibly well, it needed to be this. This is the reveal of my great secret. This is the reveal of everything that I've been hiding, and it's confirmation for some of the suspicions many of you have had, and to me, I knew that this needed to be the centerpiece of the entire project. And for that, I told Diego, listen, I want simplicity for the rest of the soundtrack because I want you to be able to give everything to this track. I want this track to be the most complex thing that you have made. Not necessarily, but I want you to aim high. I want you to aim very, very high. And what you've essentially got here is, so I'll tell you, this scene, when I say I edited it before the music was made, I edited it to the timing of a different song which inspired the scene. So what this comes to is a song from God of War Ragnarok called Ragnarok. This was so originally the so-called Nightmare had been written by Onigiri, and there was dialogue from the inner voice, and there was sort of confused dialogue from me. And the scene was good, but I thought it needs to be different. I wanted to portray this without dialogue. I wanted to portray this in a way that felt unique to me, because the only the only one who saw these events through the lens of this great nightmare was me, and I needed to bring my perspective to that. So what we wound up doing was I got on call with Malikas one night, and I said, listen, I said, let's extend the deadline. Let's push this into the future, and let's change this scene. Because she was still working at the time. This was sort of middle of last year. She was working still on sort of the earlier scenes. I said, okay, before you get to this nightmare, let's plan something else out. So I said, make it landscape, 21 by 9, or sort of the landscape orientation cinemascope. And we wrote something. I really delved really deep into what I remembered about this experience and what it felt like to see this in my mind's eye before everything went wrong, and created this scene. And the inspiration for that came from having played God of War Ragnarok, listening to that song. And like I said with everything else, like I said with all the other music from this project, like I said with the way that I come up with ideas, I listen to a song and a scene appears in my head like magic. And I listened to that song and I felt like I had a flashback. It was a really quite upsetting experience. I was actually walking. It was such an important moment. I remember it literally clearer than I remember most things. I was walking back from the pharmacy where I go to pick up my medication, and I was listening to the soundtrack. It came to that song, and I just saw it. Literally from beginning to end, what you see here, I remembered it all. And I realized that I needed to show this scene, this moment, in a different way. And that's not me trying to sound dramatic. That, I promise you, that's the truth. And I'm so glad I did, because the way this turned out was incredible. And if, might I say, no discredit to Bear McCreary for his work on the God of War soundtracks, both 1 and 2, but I have to say, at least for this scene, what Diego did blows it out of the water. Originally, the early drafts I thought were like, structurally this is good, but it needs more. And then the session musicians came in, the strings, the vocals, the operatics, the drums, the horns. There was a time when I told Diego, if you need to rent an orchestra for this song to make it do what it needs to do, you can. If you need an increase to the budget so that you can hire an orchestra so that this feels as big as it needs to feel, you can. And he didn't need it. which, if that doesn't speak to his talent, I don't know what does. So this song, I would highly recommend. It doesn't quite fit, but if you go to the end of this scene, right to here, and if you attach the end of Ragnarok, the song from God of War Ragnarok, and then, make sure that that is at that end, and then you play it, it will match up, because I edited it. The timing to this scene was all edited to this exact song. And that was how I got the pacing for it, and that is what this song was modeled on. Highly inspired by and timed very similarly to Ragnarok. And I would highly recommend checking that out, because it's a very strange experience to see the origins of that song. Yeah. Then, I don't want to talk about this scene too much, but the inspiration was Witch's Coven by Mark Corvin from the film The Witch. And there's sort of this moment in this song where there's sort of some feminine vocals, like an "eh, yeah, eh," like that. That is all sort of sampled, and he and I were looking for a voice actress to deliver some more vocals, because if you listen to Witch's Coven by Mark Corvin, it's the most disgusting vocals you've ever heard. It's a sort of a more elderly voice, screaming and gutturally wailing and gurgling, and it is disgusting to listen to. And for this track as well, the original version of this song was a lot more subdued, very chaotic towards the end, but at the beginning it sounded a little too relaxed. It was eerie, but it was kind of just flat, like, And this is, I mentioned this on stream before, this is what I told Diego, is that I said, forget what you know about making music sound nice. Because Diego, as he's mentioned on his own stream, is really good at making songs that are chill. He's really good at making sort of, really nice music that's pleasant and relaxing to listen to. He made the instrumental for New Sidonia, which is a really pleasant song to listen to. But for this, I said you need to do the opposite of what makes music sound nice. Put notes in a place that you don't want to put them in. Use sounds that your music brain is telling you, why would you do that? That sounds horrible. And do that, because if this sounds horrible, the scene works. And it does. I'm going to move past... I'm going to move past that part, and I'm going to talk about the ending, because this point is sort of more personal to me, and I feel like I can talk about it a little easier. But again, with this one, there's a lot of stuff where I mentioned, like earlier on, we had it be very sort of simplistic, or rather, it was a little too complicated, and I sort of said, okay, Diego, let's bring it down a little bit. Let's have it be a little more. Let's have it be sort of more restrained, and he did a really, really great job with this one. This one had a lot more instruments in it. It kind of immediately came with the piano, but I said, let's just have the violin. Let's just have the simplest little thing bringing it in, and I think it works a treat. But this is something new that we can talk about. So this was the last, apart from the prologue about... sort of the so-called, the little scenario where supposedly I'm talking to you in a coffee shop, sort of suddenly getting a little bit passionate about my past, and it's not entirely true. I'm getting a phone call. Can you guys give me just 1 second? Sorry about that. I was having a delivery. Needed a one-time password. Amazon, because I might have. I have some sad news. During my great transformation, and when I tore through my room, one of the things that I wound up destroying was my Nintendo Switch. It is totaled. There are giant claw marks all the way through it, and I have since thrown it out. So I've ordered a new one, and they've dropped it off. So I need to go and need to get someone to drop that outside my door so I can snatch that. So yes, I've thankfully got a new one ready for tomorrow. Rest in peace. Had that Nintendo Switch for 3 years, I think, since 2020. Hopefully I can get all my data backed up with my Nintendo account. But anyway, last of all is the epilogue. So the prologue was the last thing added because I felt like there needed to be a little more context given specifically to Tokugawa and his part in this story. But this epilogue came because I realized that, like I mentioned before, this project originally had began in quite a different way. I never realized when I'd sent that commission how huge it would turn out to be. My understanding of screenplay is that scripts tend to be roughly 1 minute per page, and the script that Onigiri wrote for this film was 27 pages originally. And so in my head I thought, half an hour, that's a pretty good size for something like this. And I just kind of never thought about the implications of how big this was. And when I realized how important this was, and when I realized what a great project this could be if I really sort of expanded on it a little bit, I realized that it needed to stand on its own. I realized that it needed more than anything to be accessible and watchable by someone who did not know who I was. And that's what this is about, because originally this is where the story ended. This would have been a straight cut to credits. Cut to white, trees roll in, credits roll, everybody goes home. And this would have worked. This would have been nice. But what I am of the understanding now is that this ending leaves someone who is somewhat uninitiated with a burning question. They know that they know that this is a true story. They know that this is something that I am telling to the audience. It's autobiographical. And so they must ask a question. If I need human souls to survive, and if consuming them makes me so utterly devastated and causes so much pain to myself and those around me, why don't I just die? Why don't I just go off and die alone? Which was my plan. For the months after this had happened, going off into the forest and dying alone was my plan. Because I thought I needed to rid the world of the evil I was capable of doing to it. But it was this, and one of the reasons why the film that I told you all to check out some months ago, The Portrait of God, why that was so impactful to me and why it scared me so much, because I felt as though I had lived through that same time. That same experience was real to me. And the reason, as you now know, that I have chosen to live this long, and why I have killed and why I inevitably will kill again, is because at this very moment when I looked into the sky, I don't mean literally, but I could feel God staring at me. And every word of this this that I wrote is real. It is how I felt. I didn't picture some kind of damnation. I didn't picture being tortured. I didn't picture what it would be like to get dragged back down to the underworld and punished there, or killed by other demons, or whatever it is. All I knew was that he saw. And I'm not a particularly religious person. I don't believe in any kind of specific one religion or their interpretation of God. But I know that there is an afterlife. And I know it's ruled by somebody. And I know that that person can choose whether or not to let you in. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, unmistakably, as I said here, that after I did what I did to that family, he saw. And I love how well Malik has managed to portray that emotion with this. This panel is actually much bigger, and you will see more of it in the graphic novel. Or rather I must have, oh no, I cropped it in the nested timeline. So yeah, you will have to just get the original to see it. But this panel is actually a full A4 page of my whole face. And you can see my mouth and my eyes and everything, but felt frozen, felt the most fear I think I've ever felt. Because I went from a place of disgust and fear, but also relative comfort to, I mean relative comfort in the sense that I knew where my life was going to end, and I felt okay with it because I felt that I deserved it. And then I realized how unready I was to face what lay beyond, because I knew that it wasn't just going to be a great comforting black void. There would be something else waiting for me. And I realized how little I wanted to find out what it looked like. And she captured that emotion to a T, down to the letter. I looking at this panel feels like I'm looking straight into a mirror. And the real centerpiece of this whole scene, I know a lot of you enjoy the way that I wrote it, and I'm proud of being able to portray this emotion with this dialogue. I'm glad that you think it turned out well. The centerpiece is the music. And some of you I actually saw on Twitter, some of you figured out what this song was inspired by. It's a track from the Oppenheimer soundtrack. Not Can You Hear the Music, but Destroyer of Worlds. I remember I saw that film in IMAX, and I was really overcome with this understanding of the song representing a person looking at something that they had done that would have consequences lasting for hundreds and hundreds of years. And also, in a sense, the way that that song sounds like a train leaving the station, the way that the tempo goes up and 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 then suddenly just cuts all the way off. The years pass without end, and I wanted to show you what it was like to be drowned in that feeling of, yes, I continue to live as these years passed, but in my heart I feel like I very much stayed in the same place. And this song was made by Unit Zero because this was, I asked for this so late into production that Diego was already busy with everything else, and he sort of recommended, well, if you want some instrumentation that gives echoes of the future, Unit Zero with those synths is the right person to ask. And so he absolutely killed it. And I'm really, really grateful to him for being able to put this together so quickly. I love every part of this song. And you don't hear much of it in this because it's a bit longer, and I didn't want to kind of take the piss by having the scene be too long. But I like the way that it cuts in from I felt that someone was staring back, because up until this point, it's a scene of me talking about being sad and regretful and wanting to die, which is correct. But the fear that I felt came when I looked at the sky and this song coming in. Chills. Hearing Jiro's theme when confronted with the consequences for my actions, nothing quite like it, really. Hearing it come back as this eerie, haunting melody that would represent just how little I would be able to walk away from this like I wanted to. And just eerie, upsetting. And in a sense also, I think that this represents the eeriness and the mysticism of a divine power. There's something about this song that feels otherworldly, and it really does suit the emotion of feeling as though you're sharing a glance with a being that you cannot comprehend. And with the line, God was watching me, I really enjoy how well the music is timed, because there's a really sort of strange synth here. And I like that mostly because this was set at a time when instrumentation and music like this did not exist. And so, were I being alive at that time to hear this song, I think that it would have really added to the fear that I felt. It feels like something I cannot comprehend, and try to ask someone alive in the 17th century to understand a synth, to understand music that exists based on technology that has not yet been invented. And it would feel like driving oneself insane, as is looking upon a divine being, something that also is difficult to comprehend. And really, even beyond that, what you have to imagine is how that I felt like this use of sort of more modern instrumentation feels like the future calling me. It feels like from the moment I saw or felt those eyes on me, I knew instantly that I couldn't let myself die. And so it was like I could hear the future from the beginning. It's like I was already there. And so this part of the film, the ending shot, this great pull back, zoom out, bird's eye view was, again, much like the nightmare, popped into my head instantaneously when I was listening to the Oppenheimer soundtrack. Began by listening to Can You Hear the Music, but then later I felt fit better with a track like Destroyer of Worlds. I saw what I felt at that time. I saw myself lying in that field, and I thought about a way of showing to someone who doesn't know who I am, doesn't know where I've come from, the fact that I have lived that long, and I've done so surrounded by this feeling. And so I saw zooming out, and as it does, the years passing, and more advancements in technology presenting themselves, the world that I once knew being overrun with buildings, infrastructure, technology, everything that I had never known about was invented before my eyes. And as the years passed, to me, they all feel like they pass at the same duration, but it almost feels like they're passing without control as my habits slip and I become more and more used to this life that I'm living and the ways that I'm willfully ignoring the other voice that we have, the angel on your shoulder telling you to stop. It all seems to spiral out of control. And some people have asked if there's any significance to this number at the very end. I think it's like 2525. Yeah, the last number. There is no special significance to that number. There is no special significance to any of these years. What I wanted to show you with the years accelerating long past where we are in time right now was the fact that I will inevitably live that long as well. Inevitably, I know that my feelings, if I have felt this afraid since all the way back here, and I still feel that way all the way up here, another 500 years to me is not just possible, it's inevitable. And so showing that quickly spiral out of control, I think, creates a sense of fear and unease, not just for me, knowing that I will feel this way long into the future, but also for you, knowing that someone is out there doing this, and that they will be doing this until long after you are dead. I mean, the preview of this is not going to load, but I need to listen to this song again, because my own experiences with these events aside, chills, right? Unbelievable. I don't know how he does it. That whole scene with the music and the way that it would then lead into credits, it appeared in my mind clear as day from the moment I listened to that song for the first time. Lays, thank you very much for the Arca Super. Watched this film so many times because it's that good. Everything blended so perfectly with each other. Thank you. Proud of you too. Love you too. And thank you for being proud of me for sharing this part of my life. Ace, thank you so much. You asked us why we didn't hate you for everything you did. I did, just the wrong time. Oh gosh. I don't know who Ivan is, but I'm sure that they were a wonderful person. I'm sorry that this film reminds you of them. Grill, thank you very much. As a kindred who worked in the animation industry, I'd like to express my admiration. Thank you. And I'm stunned by really just how incredible animation is as a medium. To me, something like this with keyframed animation and with still artwork still was such a passion project and took so much effort from so many people. And knowing how difficult animation is to work is is remarkable. Gene, thank you very much for the film ticket. Thank you to you and your team for all of your hard work. Thank you, Gene. How could I not have laid it out from the beginning? I've told you before, it's all true. I'm glad you thought I explained this well enough. My worry with this stream was that it would be a little difficult to understand, but I'm glad that you feel like you can understand it. What was there anything else that I wanted to talk about? Oh yes, well, another thing I should really mention is the way that this was drawn, because this was a real challenge. I remember it like it was yesterday. I had the concept for the scene, and I showed Malikas the song, and I said, not the song as Unit Zero had composed it, but the one from Oppenheimer, the sort of the basis for it. And I said, listen, can you do this? Is it actually possible to create a shot like this? And I'll tell you, she told me, I don't know. She had no idea if it was possible, and certainly didn't really know how. It was quite unlike anything she'd done before. And so I said, okay, let's just work through it and experiment and see how easy this is to do. And she did so much for this. These buildings are detailed, and these paths and the texture on the ground is detailed. And I'll show you something about this shot, about this sort of transition to this part. So this part, originally I felt like it didn't blend quite so well. I felt that this middle part was a little too noticeable because all of these houses around the outside were too big. It looked like, oh, it's, we can see this like it's a layer above. So I said, can you make the buildings more dense? And she said yes. And she drew more buildings with these details. And then the same thing, the most changes happened to the cityscape. Where you've got, originally there was like a massive amount of houses around here, and I said, well, these need to be denser, and these roads need to kind of be in the right place. She said, all right, and just kept working and working and working and working and working and working. And with the edit, this went in so many different directions, and I tried so many different ways to try and make it work. And I love the way she added curvature to the sides, as though we're watching, as though we're seeing the planet, and it really creates like a sense of magnitude and scale that makes it so easy to drink that in. So she did an absolutely remarkable job. Took like quite a bit of experimentation to get right, because it is a very experimental piece of art, but she killed it. It did so well with this. And I'll tell you about my biggest contribution, aside from coming up with the idea, was this fucking timer. I'm going to get up on my soapbox for a second. This fucking timer. Holy shit. I have never edited something so painstaking in my life. And you might wonder, why is that? Well, at first, I thought that it would be simple. I did this in After Effects, and what I did was I laid out a number beginning with the year in which this film takes place, and then the final year, which I said, let's put it at some point in the future, and I typed in a theoretical last year, which turned out to be 2525. That year has no special significance. I'm not a time traveler. I've simply been around a long time. I just picked it because it's far in the future, and like I said, creates that sense of panic that someone like me will be around for quite a lot longer than I already have been. And then I used time remapping so that it would start slow and gradually ease into very quickly finishing up. The problem is, with After Effects, the way that I did it was I tethered or parented the number value to the time remap so that it would count gradually. The keyframe controlled the value of the number, and it gradually went from here to there. But here's the problem. The problem is that each number has a different spacing between each other number. So this timer was flying around like this, the one was staying in place, but then these numbers were going like, and they were flying back and forth. And I thought that this looks lame. And so what I did then was I went through such a long, painstaking experimental process trying to figure out how to get these numbers to stay in place no matter what number they became. And so what happened was the way that I did it in the end was that I did that with After Effects the same way I had done before. But what I did was I did it separately with 4 separate numbers, each one being 1 through 9 or 0 through 9. This was just 1 and 2, but this was 0 to 9, 0 to 9, 0 to 9. And from there, I rendered out each one as its own image. And then I put it in Vegas instead of After Effects, and I counted it out frame by, no, actually the wrong order. I made the numbers in Photoshop, put them in Vegas next to each other, then counted them out frame by frame so that the numbers would count up in the right order. So this number was first, and I had, all right, 1 frame each from 0, let's do 1 frame, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then grab that, copy it for the duration of the entire scene. Then, this one, each one of those would be the same length as those 10 frames. So 1, 2, 3, and so on. Copy and paste that for the rest of the scene. Same thing with this one to the length of these. Same thing with this one to the length of these. And I did that for the duration of this scene, put it in After Effects to make sure that it matched the time remap, to make sure that it would go slowly to begin with and then fast, added a green screen, added a glow effect so that it would look kind of ethereal and cool, and then laid it over the top, and that was that. Am I okay? No. But it was fun because I figured out what I was doing, and I think that's sort of the joy of editing in a way, is that it is like a puzzle, you know? It's like a puzzle. You're just taking your time to figure out, how am I going to make this work? You're presented with a series of assets, whether it's video, images, sounds, whatever, and you just think, I have to turn this into a film. How am I going to do it? And you just think about the tools you have available, you do some research, and you just muddle through it. Editing this in the way that I did felt like walking through a swamp. Every part of the swamp had a new swamp creature in it that I had to dispatch in a different way. It was like a swamp from Monster Hunter, where there was a different like lizard or something that all had to be dealt with in a completely different way. And I just trudged through for months through this swamp, and then I got to the end and I was like, oh, I'm glad I made it through the swamp, but I don't know if I'm going to do that again. If I make another film, I think I will make it in quite a different way. But we'll see. Maybe this is the way I'll do another one, but oh boy, this was a real process. I'm so proud of how it turned out, and I'm so proud of the team, but this was an insane task, and I'm just very glad that it's over now. Because not only was it tedious, not only was this the most complicated thing I've ever edited in my life, some of the hardest I've worked on anything at any point in my life, but having to hear those voices and see those faces that I recognized so well from my past every day was really hard. And I mentioned that on stream a few times. I mentioned how I was feeling emotional. And you may have noticed in the last few weeks before I made this announcement, or before I took a bit of a hiatus to really work on this and get it done, I talked about working on this project and how difficult it was to revisit these episodes from my past. And I'm not going to go back and watch it, but the editing on the scene where Jiro's parents find him is cut the way it is intentionally. The lack of fades or any effects is to let the emotion speak on its own without trying to distract. The lack of music, the lack of ambience is all there for that reason. But I'm grateful to that because it's a scene that I could only bring myself to watch once. I couldn't even listen to Jonah and Amelie's take more than a couple times because I started crying. And I'm not saying that to just say that. I really mean that it was a very difficult scene to edit. Something about that, to change the subject slightly because it's a little heavy, is that something that amazed me about the professionalism from Jonah and Amelie is that you can tell how professional they are because it took them no time to deliver a performance of that scale. I remember both for when I had my session with Jonah and when I had my session with Amelie, we reached that moment in the story and I said, okay, this is going to be intense. Take your time. Don't feel like you need to do this right away. I've got all day, if you need to warm up, just let's get this right, okay? And both of them delivered the most heart-wrenching shit I've ever heard on their first try. And I was shocked at how effortlessly they were able to slip into that emotion. Jonah especially shocked me because he delivered that. The real show stealer is Amelie, but underneath you've got this really gut-wrenching cry from Jonah. And he did that, and he cried for some 30 seconds, and I listened, and I wanted to ask him if he was okay And he came down from that, and he just, in his normal voice, as soon as he was done, like barely any recovery, he just said, "Is that good?" And I think more than anything, that moment really, I'm glad that came at the end of our session, because I needed to lie down. I had to lie down after that just to appreciate the absurdity of the situation, the absurdity of making a whole project like this surrounding such a serious event, and then reliving these events through a performance from actors. It's, I mean, I know some biopics are autobiographical and some people who live through those events are involved, but it's uncanny. Can't imagine what that must be like for other people, but, you know, we live in that. So yeah, that is about everything. Not much to really talk about with the ending. The title was animated by Saki EXE and designed by Orihime, and these two gave me like a billion different versions of this title with this animation. There's a version which has film damage, there's a version which is on paper because it sort of looks like it's being sketched, but this one I thought was the nicest one, so I wanted to put that at the end with a little flicker like that. So they did some amazing work as well. And that's that. That is really as much perspective as I feel able to give on the production of the Demon Hungers. It was, like I said, an incredible passion project and something that I feel incredibly blessed to have been supported enough to work on. And I just hope to God that I can, no pun intended, that I can keep making things like this. I want to shoot for the stars, and I want to set the record that that NIJISANJI, that VTubers, that everyone are capable of making so much. This kind of thing is something that I care about so much, and I have not stopped. I'm already started on the next thing. I'm contacting people. I've got a plan. I'm speaking with managers. I'm speaking with these people. The next step is coming, and it will take some time, but you will, you know, have a good reason to stick around, because you'll be very lucky if you do. Thank you, Float. Thank you. Oh, Float, is that a rainbow? Thank you so much. The plot and scene arrangement are all great, and the new clothes release afterwards. Broad emotions right at the top. Yeah, it's pretty convenient timing, isn't it? Well, it was terrible timing for me, and it was very painful, but I'm glad that it sort of artistically managed to make you feel a little fulfilled. Kumaki, thank you. Sal, thank you very much. Aura, thank you. Thank you so much. Very lively. That's a name I can't read, but thank you very much. And then Rebecca M, thank you so much. Lou, thank you for the Akasupa. Absolutely amazed by everything you've done. I'm glad. Happy to have you as one of my kindred. Thank you. And thank you so much. Having that courage to recall and talk about your past is the first step to healing. You're right. Cello, thank you very much. Tender Dream, thank you so much. Didier, thank you very much. Nya Nya, thank you very much for the Akasupa. All of the wonderful work, and thank you for sharing the behind the screen stories with us. You guys worked so hard. We did. Everybody gave it their all, and I'm very grateful to all of them. Paying Mochi Bunny, Moeko, Jenny Alex, thank you so much, and Olivia, thank you for the Akasupa. Thanks for sharing all the references. Experiencing another layer of feeling as those other works bring in deeper understanding of the film really makes the movie lover tingle much inside. It's kind of how I felt when I was making this, because I felt like I got that much closer to my dream, which is to be behind the camera and to make a film. I really hope that I find myself there someday, and projects like this really feel like I'm getting closer. It's very exciting for me. Thanks. Lumin, Toya, Rumi, Yana, Luna, thank you guys very much. Usachi, thank you so much. Murasaki, Surukula, Ayase, Worried, thank you very much. Mafia Gravity, Yuki, thank you. Okay, Senya, thank you very much. Yeah, the credits song is beautiful. I'll tell you a little bit about the credits song before I go. The credits song was essentially what happened with the credits song is that My original idea for the credits, I edited it timing-wise originally to this song from God of War called Rab's Lament. Rab, interestingly, being a character from God of War played by the guy who composed the music, Bear McCreary, because it's sort of a funeral march. If you haven't played God of War, I'd recommend, if you Google that song, don't look at the comments because it'll be full of spoilers. But originally I had that, and it sounds very different to this. Diego approached me, and I remember I, again, surprisingly, was on the bus. I was going to get my medication, and Diego sent me a message saying, can I be really personal with the credits song? Can I do something that's very me? And I thought, sure. I thought, like, yeah, no, I'm really glad that he treated this like as more than just a commission and as like a project that he had a hand in creating as well. He's not just following instructions, he's really living up to his own expectations as well. And so he created the draft for it. And I loved how it sounded. But what I did tell him was, I was like, this sounds a little too happy. I was like, this is surprisingly very uplifting after an ending where I talk about how afraid I am to keep living eternally because I'm so afraid of death. And so what he said was, all right, well, what happened because of that is that he added this introduction. He added this little introduction with the violin. Whoa, Jesus. Didn't think that would be the ending. He added this little introduction. Which to me, I think really does flow from this so perfectly. It's more traditional instrumentation as opposed to the synths of This Burden Forever Yours, and it manages to, you know, sort of flow from this nicely because it sort of brings us back to the story we watched. Just like the trees bring us back down to the ground, and sort of reminds us of, you know, the whole package. And then it sort of transitions into this song. And at first I had mixed feelings because, again, I felt like it was too uplifting for a project that has an ending that is so bleak and sad. But with time, I grew to love it because I thought about how, especially that ending, is my heart in vain? Would I still be saved? Will you know my name? And the way that Riemann delivers those lines, it was so uplifting and so powerful. And what it made me think was, wow, it is incredible. Oh no. It was incredible that this project was made at all. And that, I think, is the emotion that it leaves me with. This song with all of those emotions. Oh, it's done. Oh no, it's fine. I clicked the wrong button. These emotions are what it felt like to realize what we'd done. This emotion was what it felt like to look back on this project and to appreciate just how much had gone into it, how hard everyone had worked, and how much we had achieved, and the new standard that we had set by completing it. It was, I don't think I could end this film any other way, because, do you want to know something, actually? In a very early concept stage, I wanted to end this film by paying to use a licensed song. I wanted to end, I just remembered this. I asked staff about this well over a year ago, like middle of last year, maybe early last year. Shortly after, actually, my 522K karaoke, where I sang Johnny Cash, I listened to another song by Johnny Cash called The Beast in Me. And I asked staff if it was possible to pay a license to play that song for the credits. What staff told me was, we can technically do that, but you will be paying royalties every time someone watches the film. And I thought, ooh, like that's probably gonna, you know, really outweigh, you know, with a project with a budget this big already. That's probably an unwise decision, because the amount of money earned from someone watching the film is much, much lower than what would be paid to the rights holders for using the song. But one of my favorite tropes in film is when a particularly chaotic or disturbing film has credits that are comforting, like immensely comforting or still or maybe just neutral. Good examples would be The Lighthouse, which ends with, spoilers, which ends with Robert Pattinson's character Thomas Wake getting, Tom Howard, Thomas Wake is Willem Dafoe, Tom Howard getting his guts picked out like, was it Prometheus getting his guts picked out by the birds, and then it suddenly cuts to a little sea shanty, which really brings the emotion down and gives you a space to really walk back from the experience. And it's also cruel. It's kind of evil to show someone something that vicious and to then bring them down to something happy. The juxtaposition is very powerful. Same example with Mother, which I would say is an even bigger example. That's another one of my favorite films with an ending that is just traumatizing, completely traumatizing. Especially for me as a God-fearing man. A very chaotic, disgustingly disturbing film that ends with a song, "Why do the birds keep on singing?" And it brings it down from the total disturbing chaos you've witnessed to something that is just still and calm, and it really makes you feel like, huh. And the lyrics in, you don't need me to explain it to you. If you listen to that song from Johnny Cash, The Beast in Me, it's practically just the plot of the film. The beast in me is caged by frail and fragile bars, restless by day and by night, rants and rages at the stars. God help the beast in me. The beast in me has had to learn to live with pain and how to shelter from the rain. And listen to this. And in the twinkling of an eye, might have to be restrained. God help the beast in me. And there's more of it. Probably shouldn't sing more. But, all of it, I felt like it was too perfect. Sad I didn't get to use it, but, wise choice, I think, to stick with something that's so uplifting and really celebrates everyone's hard work on bringing this project to life. So, yeah, thank you very much, everybody. I'll thank the last few supers, and then I will take a little bit. I will take some time to rest, I think. So, yes, thank you very much to Lumos for the Akasupa. Last time you said that you don't want to wind up between kindred and their dreams. I've never felt so close to the passion of pursuing my dream till I met you. That's wonderful. My dream is that you do achieve your dream, and I'm really glad that you feel closer to your passions. The only thing I'm worried about coming between you and your dreams is that I may, we may run into each other and I may kill you. But, the chances of that happening are very low. I imagine if that was about to happen, you'd probably recognize me, and then, you would be like, "Hey, Vox Akuma, I'm a fan," and I'd be like, "Holy shit," and then I would make a very conscious decision not to kill you, but you never know. Eric, thank you very much. The work in detail is asthma-inducing. That's a new one. I haven't heard that before. Glad I met exactly you to inspire me. Stubbornly pursue entertainment arts. That's just the thing. Oh, it's stubbornness, raw stubbornness. Because I knew that someone like me, for many parts of my life, I've worked as a hired muscle. I've worked in all sorts of different places. You know, actually, there was a time sort of around the turn of the 1930s, which was around when I first came to the UK, that I actually worked in a textiles factory for a little while. And as you can imagine, I was really, really, really bad at it. I don't understand how I kept that job at all, but, you know, I guess it was good for me because factories back then were not safety inspected to the extent that they are now. And as someone who can regenerate from a lot of wounds, the idea of losing a limb didn't quite scare me as much as maybe it would scare other people. But yeah, I didn't work there for terribly long because my concentration just wasn't really good for that. I think I injured myself there more than most people. But stubbornness, pursuing the arts in spite of the life that was given to me, has been something that's very therapeutic. Ace, thank you. Misty, thank you very much for the super. I appreciate that. That's very kind. Nyanya, thank you. Smee, thank you. The beast in you, yeah. You cherish that beast in you. That's a sweet beast. Terushka, thank you. You're a gift. Thank you. And Tokito, that's kind of you too. Okay, that is going to be all from me. Butter Yui and Miaobeng, thank you very much. It's great to see so many familiar faces. After everything, you know. So, Moyin Chen, thank you very much. I am going to take the rest of the day. My throat's getting a little bit jammed up, so I'm going to go and rest. But what I would recommend is for all of you to look after yourselves, take some time to rest and relax. And I will do the same. The translations for the film will be up very soon, and I will see you tomorrow. When I'm going to try... Today was nice because I felt like I loosened up a lot more. I feel like while I don't think I'm really capable of being too much of, you know, I can't act like this part of me isn't there, but just returning to, you know, some of the things that you like about me is something that I'm hoping I can get back to soon, but we'll see. Okay. It was nice to be able to relax a little. So that's going to be it all. Lily Demon Nerd, thank you. Fern and Moin-chan, thank you so much. So I will, I'll see you all another time. It was really, really nice today because, like I said, I enjoyed getting a chance to ease out of a lot of my bad feelings, and they're still there, but you don't deserve to suffer for my wrongdoing. So I'll look forward to tomorrow where hopefully we can chill out a little bit more. So I'll see you then.